Hi, everyone. Michael P. Spradlin. I'm back today with Chapter 7 of Into the Killing Seas. I've been reading this book online. You can find all the previous chapters on my Facebook page. The videos are right there. You can find me on Facebook by searching Michael P. Spradlin. I hope you'll like the page and watch the previous chapters if you haven't already. And for those of you who are participating, I'm really happy that you're enjoying it and that your students and your children are enjoying it. And I would freely give you permission to use those videos in any way you see fit during this crisis, as long as it lasts. If you are a teacher or an educator, I have a lesson plan for this book. So drop me an email at michael@michaelspradlin.com, and I'd be happy to send it to you. And I hope, like I said, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're being safe and healthy, and let's all pull together and get through this together. And I think one of the great ways to get through things is with stories. So here we go with Chapter 7. It's called The Darkest Depths. 30 July 1945, Day 1. I'm not sure how long I lay asleep, half in and half out of the water. It could have been hours or minutes. When I came to, I was still clinging to the pallet, and Teddy was whimpering softly, something he often did in his fitful sleep. The night sky was still dark, but it was growing lighter far off in the horizon. When the moon cracked its way through the clouds, I could see Benny floating along, his burned hands twisted in between the wooden slats of our makeshift raft. He groaned and muttered soft curses under his breath. The sea had calmed some, and the waves were not quite as high as they'd been before. Still, even the smaller ones tossed us about. I wished I could find a way to get some light height and have a look around, but I was so exhausted my head and shoulders remained planted on the wood. As I wiped the sleep from my eyes, I realized we weren't as alone as I thought. Everywhere around us, voices were yelling all at once. Everything, from the sound of it, a whole bunch of crew had managed to abandon ship. But from their cries for help, it was also clear a great many of them were injured. "Where's the doc?" "I got a wounded man here," I heard a husky voice call. The doctor. Every ship had at least one doctor plus several medical corpsmen. If I could find one of them, maybe they could help Benny. As if he knew what I was thinking, he came about, moaning, lifting his head, and looking around. "Patrick, you still there, Pipsqueak?" "I'm right here, Benny," I said. "Good. We being rescued yet?" "Nah, not yet. The sun will be up soon, and I hear a lot of guys yelling for help, but I don't see them, or any help for us," I said. "Yeah, with these waves, I bet our guys is scattered everywhere. Hard keeping track in the dark." Benny stopped talking and groaned. It sounded like he was in agony. "What's wrong, Benny?" I asked. "Nothing, sport. Just a rough start to the morning is all. I don't expect this salt water is doing these burns I got any good." I didn't know what to say. If I were in the jungle, I could have found lots of things to help Benny. Fresh water, plants that would help his burns heal, even mud packed on the wounds would stop infection and ease the pain. The Chamorro taught me a lot about survival and living off the land. In the jungle, not the middle of the ocean. But maybe one of Benny's shipmates could help him. Their voices sounded like they were coming from all directions. "Where's the doctor?" the husky voice shouted again. "I think that's Colosi," Benny whispered. He'd mentioned the Marine from Chicago before. Voice sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. "No one's seen him," another sailor answered back. "But I know he made it off the ship. Doc! Doc, you out there?" I heard someone else answer, but they were too far away to understand. "That's him! That's Doc," Colosi said. "We gotta swim toward him. I got a wounded man here." "Help! Over here!" I shouted. "Who goes there?" a voice shouted back. "We're hurt. There's an injured Marine here," I said. No one answered. "Listen up, Pipsqueak," Benny rasped. "I know Colosi. I don't like him. He's trouble. I think you ought to stay away from him and his bunch until sunup. Find somebody else out there. Capiche?" Benny groaned, and though it was dark and nearly impossible to see, I had the sense that he had passed out again. At any rate, he was silent. I thought about what he said. He didn't like that Sergeant Stinkevich back on the ship, and Stinkevich seemed like a jerk. Now he was telling me to stay away from this guy Colosi. Well, maybe I should listen to him. What if Colosi and his friends tried to take the pallet away from us? What would we do then? More men shouted out to each other from somewhere. The noise and size of the waves made it difficult to determine where their voices were coming from. It still wasn't light enough yet to see much, but I had an idea. "Benny?" He groaned incoherently. "Benny," I shouted. "What?" he said. I could tell I startled him awake. "Can you swim? Help me push the pallet through the water? I don't know, buddy. I'm plumb wore out. If I could rest a while, I might be able to help. Why? Because I just heard more of the crew shouting over there about the doctor. He got off the ship with the rest of the survivors. If we can find him, maybe he can treat your burns. That's a real good idea, Pipsqueak. You're thinking like a Marine, making an assessment of your tactical situation, choosing your course of action. But here's the thing. Your troops is done in, Patty boy. Teddy is too wrung out to help, and as much as it pains Benjamin Franklin Poindexter, Private First Class United States Marine Corps, to say it, I ain't fit for duty right now. Besides, I'll bet that doc's waiting room is full up right now. A lot of wounded he's got to tend to. Assuming it was even him them swabbies heard. We should just wait here. Someone will be along to rescue us soon, he said. Something was different in Benny. Never once could I remember him saying not to do a thing, or that we were going to find a way to accomplish or that we weren't going to find a way to accomplish what we set out to do. Benny was always upbeat and positive, except for Swabbies, Tojo, Hirohito, Hank Greenberg, and Sergeant Stinkevich. He never had anything bad to say about anybody. Now he was making up a reason, an excuse not to try something. I figured it was my turn to get him going. You always told me Marines never give up, I said. Hey now, whoa, whoa, whoa. Benny was almost whispering. His voice was so weak. Don't you go spouting off about quitting. I ain't saying that. We ain't giving up. Not one bit. But even a squared away Marine has got to rest and regroup before the next fight. Best thing we can do is hunker down and wait till daylight. By then the rescue ships and planes will be here, and we'll get plucked right out of this giant bathtub like a rubber duck. I think we just need to rest until then. All right, Patty boy? I guess, I said, but I wasn't convinced Benny was right. I was thinking about the chaos on board the ship when the torpedoes hit, how fast the Indianapolis went down. I remembered some of the crew saying nobody knew for sure if the distress call went out, how the communication system got all blown up with the first hit. Nobody even knew when to abandon ship because the speakers didn't work. I wasn't sure Benny was thinking clearly. Maybe nobody was coming for us, at least not for a while. I rested for a few minutes. The pallet was doing an admirable job of keeping me afloat. I had no idea which direction was which, but there was light starting to break off the horizon to my left, so I knew that must be east. I heard some guys shouting again, not Colosi, some voices I didn't recognize coming from behind me. I was reminded again about the doctor. If Benny and Teddy couldn't help, it didn't matter. I could. I worked around to Teddy's side of the pallet and started kicking with my legs, pushing it slowly toward the sound of the voices. I wasn't making much progress, but it was something. After a while, I was getting closer. The voices were getting louder and clearer, and suddenly I could make out what men were shouting, dozens of them. They weren't calling for the doctor anymore. They were screaming for their lives. No! Dear God, no! I heard a single voice crying out. Help! Someone please help me! More voices joined in. I heard a high-pitched, almost squeaky voice from someone who sounded young and terrified. A gruff, hoarse cry, probably someone from New York because he sounded like Benny, only with a deeper tone. Then a southern accent shouted out in horror, joining an overwhelming chorus of screams. They sounded as if they were just being tortured. Then the younger-sounding voice spelled out the reason for their alarm, and I instantly grew terrified myself. Sharks! He yelled. Everywhere! Look out! His words died in his throat, and he made the most horrifying, anguished sound I'd ever heard. On Guam, when someone was shot, death usually came quickly. A bullet ripped into someone's chest, and that was it for them. Or sometimes in the jungle, we had to leave our wounded behind, because when you're being hunted by the Japanese Imperial Army, silence is life and noise is death, and the wounded tend to make noise. I tried not to think about the ones we'd abandoned. The Japanese always caught up with them quickly. Usually you'd hear a single gunshot, and then their cries would stop. Now it was sharks. There were sharks in the water, and from the sound of it, they were all around those men. I stopped paddling and floated there, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell me what to do. Benny was too far gone at the moment to realize what was happening. And then, below the surface of the water, something hard and scaly brushed against my leg. The sharks had found us. And just like the other man had, I screamed. And we'll be back tomorrow with Chapter 8. Everyone stay healthy, and we'll see you tomorrow.